He was born in the 14 Flames, before the Doom. He burned Harrenhal to its foundations in a single night. He forged the Iron Throne in his breath. And when he finally died, more than 200 years later, he was the last living creature in the world that had ever seen Valyria. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Dragons of Westeros, Episode 1, Balerion the Black Dread. The old tales say he was hatched in the volcanic mountains of the Valyrian Freehold when the Dragon Lord still ruled a continent and 40 great families kept the 14 Flames in their chains. No one knows the year, no one knows who first fed him. What we know is that when a minor dragon lord named Aegon Targaryen sold his holdings and fled west on the warning of his daughter's dreams, there were 5 dragons in his household. 4 of them would die on a lonely island at the edge of the world. Only one would live to see everything. They called that island Dragonstone. 12 years after Aegon's flight, the 14 Flames erupted all at once. The sea boiled. The Dragon Lord families died screaming in their palaces. A civilization thousands of years old vanished in a single day. And on a rock in the narrow sea, a young black dragon suddenly became the last thing alive that had ever known the Freehold. And on Dragonstone, he endured, slowly, patiently, through a century of silence. Through the generations of Targaryen lords who came and went on Dragonstone, while the rest of the world tore itself apart in wars they did not fight. By the time a boy named Aegon claimed him, Balerion had been alive for nearly 100 years, and his shadow already stretched wide enough to swallow small towns. Aegon did not need to say anything to the Black Dread. He simply climbed onto his back, and together they crossed the sea. When the Dragons of Westeros remembered what a dragon could do, it was Balerion who reminded them. At the mouth of the Blackwater, he burned the host of the Darklings and the Mutons in a single pass. At Harrenhal, King Harren the Black had just finished the greatest castle the world had ever seen. 40 years of labour, walls thicker than any in the known world, towers taller than any ever raised by men. Harren stood on those walls and laughed, because stone does not burn. Then Balerion came out of the night. Fire and blood tells it simply. On wings as black as pitch, the Black Dread plunged through the dark, and when the great towers of Harrenhal appeared beneath him, he roared his fury and bathed them in black fire, shot through with swirls of red. The stone melted like candles. Harren the Black and all his sons died inside their own tower, burned alive where they stood. House Targaryen ended in that fire. The melted ruins of Harrenhal still scar the Riverlands to this day, twisted and black, a monument that no mason and no king has ever been able to fully repair. Catelyn Stark saw them centuries later. Arya Stark hid within them. Jaime Lannister rode through their shadow. Every one of them was walking through the memory of Balerion's fire. But the greatest day of the Conquest was yet to come. At the Field of Fire, the kings of the Reach and the Rock brought together the largest army Westeros had ever seen. 55,000 men. Mern Gardner, the last king of his house. Loren Lannister, the last king of his. Against them, Aegon had barely 10,000 and 3 dragons, Vhagar, Meraxes, and the Black Dread. It was the only battle in all of history in which those 3 would ever fly together. They set the dry summer grasses alight in a great ring around the enemy host, and then they closed that ring upon them. 4,000 men burned where they stood. House Gardner was extinguished that day, every male of their blood dying in the flames alongside their king. Loren Lannister escaped with his life and bent the knee the next morning. There would never be a field of fire again, because there would never be 3 such dragons in the sky at once, ever again. Balerion outlived them both. At the Trident, Torrhen Stark brought 30,000 Northmen south to meet Aegon. He could have fought, he chose to kneel, and the reason his lords later called him the king who knelt was not cowardice. It was a shadow passing over the cold water of the Trident at dawn, black as night, so vast it darkened the river beneath it. No Northman who saw it ever forgot it. After the conquest, Balerion slept. Aegon grew old, Aegon died, and his younger son Maegor, who had refused every other dragon as beneath him, walked into the yards of Dragonstone and claimed the Black Dread. Only Maegor had the will to claim him, and the Black Dread accepted him. He used Balerion for terror. He burned the warriors' sons inside their own sept in King's Landing, hundreds of holy men screaming in black fire behind coloured glass. And when his own nephew, Aegon the Uncrowned, rose against him, Maegor took Balerion into the sky to end him. They called it the Battle Beneath the God's Eye, the first time in the history of Westeros that one dragon killed another. Aegon the Uncrowned rode the pale silver Quicksilver, the dragon of his gentle father. She was young, she was small, and when Balerion fell upon her from above, out of the clouds, he seized her in his claws and tore a wing from her body. She fell, with the prince still on her back. That was the first dragon-on-dragon kill ever recorded in Westeros. Almost a century later, when the Dance of the Dragons tore the realm apart, every death in that war would carry the shadow of what Balerion had done above the God's Eye. When Maegor died on the Iron Throne in a way no one could fully explain, the Black Dread came home to Dragonstone. And there, he did not stay quiet. In the year 54 after the Conquest, a miserable little girl named Aerea Targaryen climbed onto Balerion's back without permission, and the dragon took her somewhere she had not asked to go. For nearly 2 years they were gone. No ravens, no sightings, no word anywhere in the known world. Then, on the 13th day of the 4th moon of 56 AC, he came back. He landed in the dragon pit, wounded in ways the dragon keepers had never seen. Burns and gashes that no beast in Westeros could have given him. And on his back, barely alive, was the girl. The maesters brought her to the Red Keep. Septon Bath himself examined her. What they found is one of the darkest passages ever written in the histories of House Targaryen. There were things moving inside her, things beneath her skin that rose and fell, as though searching for a way out. The milk of the poppy gave her no relief. She burned with a fever no man could cool. And within hours, she was dead. Septon Bath wrote in a letter that the dragon had flown home. Home to the drowned cities of the 14 Flames. Home to the smoking sea, where no ship has ever returned. Something there had fought the Black Dread. Something there had planted its young inside a little girl. No living soul in the histories ever went so deep into the ruins of Valyria and returned with proof of it. Only Balerion. After Aerea, Balerion would accept no rider for nearly 40 years. He grew old in the dragon pit, slow and heavy, while the sons of Jaehaerys the Conciliator were born and grew and had sons of their own. And then one day, a boy prince named Viserys walked into the pit to try what no one had dared in a lifetime. The old dragon was hard to rouse, his wings almost too heavy to lift, but he rose, and they flew 3 slow circles around King's Landing, the last flight the Black Dread would ever take. Viserys had meant to fly to Dragonstone. He turned back because he was afraid the dragon's strength would fail him in the air. Less than a year later, the strength did fail. He did not fall from a sky. He did not die in a battle. He was not poisoned or betrayed or slain by another of his kind. He simply grew too heavy, too tired, too old, and he lay down in his lair, and his ancient heart stopped beating. He was more than 200 years old. They took his skull. They mounted it in the throne room of the Red Keep, closest to the iron throne he had forged in his own breath. A skull so vast a grown man could have walked inside his jaws. And for nearly 200 years more, every king who sat that throne sat beneath the teeth of the Black Dread. When Robert Baratheon took the throne after the rebellion, he could not bear the sight of those teeth. He had them taken down. He could not bring himself to break them, so he had them carried into the cellars, and there, behind wooden doors, in the dark, they were forgotten. Years later, a young dwarf named Tyrion Lannister crept into those cellars alone with a torch and stood before the skull of the oldest dragon in the world. He thought it was beautiful. The teeth, he wrote, shone like black diamond. The bone was cold and hard to the touch. And he felt, in the dark beneath the Red Keep, that the skull seemed almost to lean toward the flame of his torch, as though the old dragon remembered the fire. So tell me this. When Septon Barth wrote that Balerion had flown home to Valyria, do you believe him? Write it in the comments. And if you want more stories from the Dragons of Westeros, the ones who rose before our history and the ones who died after, subscribe to Westeros Within and join me for the next chapter. Because next time, we follow the dragon who flew beside him at the Field of Fire. The dragon who outlived him by decades. The dragon who was the first love of Visenya Targaryen, the forgotten mount of a prince no one remembers, and the killing weight of a one-eyed boy above Shipbreaker Bay. Her name was Vhagar, and when she finally fell, the Lake of the God's Eye rose as tall as a tower to meet her.